Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have with me Gwen Preston and Eric Coffin, two newsletter writers, independent newsletter writers. I should add that write for their paid subscribers, the people who pay for their efforts and their good work. And I've known both of these people now, Eric longer than Gwen, but have a very high regard for both newsletter writers. They're very knowledgeable about the resource sector, and in particular the junior sector. So I'm very pleased to have both of you with me again. Thanks, Gwen, and thanks, Eric, for joining me.
Thanks, Jay.
Should start out, maybe just let our listeners know it's resourcemaven.ca, resourcemaven.ca for Gwen Preston, and you can follow what Eric does and then sign up for his newsletter at hraadvisory.com, hraadvisory.com. I hope I've got that right. Do I?
Yep.
Right. Yes, you do. Yep.
All right. Good. We like our people to be able to follow up after they've heard you talk. Gwen, let's start out with you. What are your thoughts as we head into this new year, 2017? We've had a pretty... Well, it's been a sort of a round trip of a year for gold shares and for the markets in many ways. Are you hopeful at all for 2017? Because a lot of people have gotten very, very discouraged and bearish, at least gold investors and gold share investors.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a really interesting year, and it's finishing off with a really interesting month. Certainly the gold price has clearly broken down, through technical barriers and in terms of sentiment. Problems obviously stem back to the strength of the dollar, the strength of the U.S. markets, bullishness in America in general. In a big picture perspective, I'm still bullish on gold. I still think that we are in a gold uptrend environment, and that's because there's no reason at this point to think that real interest rates are going to be anything other than negative for the foreseeable future. So in that sense, I'm still bullish on gold. The near term, however, is certainly challenged. I mean, like I say, the headwinds for gold are the dollar in the U.S. markets, and we don't see changes. I don't see near-term reasons for those to break down specifically right away. I think one of the interesting ways that's playing out is that right now, I mean, it's the 20th of December today. Usually companies stop trying, junior explorers stop trying to raise money once the middle of December hits. It's just a weak time of year and people go on vacation and you can't get subscription forms in. But there's dozens of financings happening right now. So it's an interesting time in the market. Clearly companies are concerned that the price of gold is going to remain weak, despite the fact that the first few months of the year are usually the best for gold. So there's a possibility that gold will strengthen once January hits, but there's certainly concern around that gold will stay weak, and lots of companies are doing what they can to raise some money right now so that they can be active in the new year regardless of what happens with the price of gold.
Yeah, that's very interesting to note that they are still raising money in this environment. Eric, what are your thoughts about the markets as we head into the new year?
I mean, I'm generally, I guess, sort of positive. I'm pretty comfortable that this is a new bull market. So, and yeah, it's a big drawdown towards the end of the year, and people are upset and depressed and whatever. But the simple truth is, if you look at what happened this year, and if you were harping on people as I was, and I know quite well that Gwen was, that you get into exploration situations and the market's nice enough to give you 200 or 300% gain so you can zero out. And as a result, and I know both Gwen and I were telling people over and over until they were sick of hearing it to do that. So hopefully people are still in reasonably good shape, and I'm seeing continued buying on stories that are active right now. And by that I mean they're in the field right now, and where people like the look of the targets or they've already generated some decent results. They're not moonshots by any means, but they're actually holding up reasonably well, and that gives me some comfort and some hope that if companies can deliver on their exploration promise, I think they're still going to be able to find money. It's definitely harder than it was a few months ago. As far as gold goes, I don't, personally, I know 1080 is kind of the official chart number, but I'm a little skeptical it's going to go that low. I think when we get to year end, you're going to see some rollover in New York. There's a huge amount of window dressing going on right now. And once those fund managers get past December, and they've sent out their quarterly statements and shown how clever they were. I expect some of them to be taking money off the table because, I mean, these guys aren't idiots. They know how overvalued the market is, but they have to be seen to be in the market when the year closes out. Plus, with Trump, who knows? I mean, yeah, he's had this enormous honeymoon, but it's very similar to me to the Reagan rally, the first time Reagan was elected, and the year after he was elected, which is the first official year of his term, wasn't a great one for the major markets. We might see a repeat of that, I think.
Yeah, it certainly does seem to be a honeymoon, and nobody is, Gwen, you were saying that you think we're still looking at negative real rates of interest, which is really the key for gold, I believe. So we'll see, but it seems as though everybody is sort of buying into the idea that we've got a new president and everything's going to be just honky-dory and we're going to have this great growth and everything else, despite all the debt and everything else. Well, I don't want to dwell too much on economic stuff because we do that most of the rest of the show, but what I would like to do is get a couple of the top picks that both of you have. Gwen, starting with you, I think you indicated Nevson, which is a name that I've known for quite a few years, but haven't followed it as it's grown up into a pretty good-sized company. I see it's got a market cap of $1.3 billion or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nevsun, definitely a story that's been around for a while. For many years was defined by its Bisha mine in Eritrea, so East Africa. And Bisha is a fantastic mine. It started out as a gold mine, but then became predominantly a copper mine. And in the last year, they have commissioned, and are now producing from a zinc circuit. And that is one of the reasons that I really like the story right now. If you are concerned about the price of gold, well, why don't you look at copper and zinc? Because those are commodities that are actually doing very well. I mean, the price of zinc has almost doubled in the last 12 months, which is very impressive, and has moved the price of zinc up out of the sideways band that it's been in for almost 7 years. So it has actually broken up from that. And fundamentals for zinc are very strong. And the Nevsun's zinc concentrate was the only zinc concentrate to enter the market this year. The freely available zinc market. So that's one suggestion of how tight the zinc market is. I know smelter charges for zinc concentrates have come down dramatically in the last few months. That's the amount that a smelter charges to process your zinc concentrate, and high charges suggest that there's lots of concentrate available, and smaller charges mean that it's getting competitive to get that con, and that's the situation we're in right now. We're just sort of running out of zinc con. So I think Nevsun provides some great exposure to zinc, which is a bit of a difficult thing to get into a portfolio, exposure to zinc. There's not a lot of pure zinc stories out there. And then they also had a fantastic year in that they closed the acquisition of Reservoir Minerals, which gave them the Timok project in Serbia.
Yes.
The story there is just an example of how a really good discovery holds value regardless of what's going on with the market. I mean, Timok came to be during the bear market. It's a fantastic discovery. We're talking about the upper zone there where the grades of copper are sort of 8 to 15%. The grades of gold are 5 to 12 grams per ton, right? We're looking at a really high grade deposit that now Nevsun is moving towards, planning how they will turn that into a mine. So now they've got an organic growth profile. They've got new zinc concentrate. I think they're very well positioned for this coming year.
Yeah, and pay a little dividend too, I believe.
They do, and they're very focused on that dividend. I know some of their major shareholders would not let them cancel that. So yeah, it's actually a medium-scale miner that pays a dividend, which is unusual in itself.
Oh, okay. And one other one that you mentioned, Red Eagle.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So Red Eagle just finished and is currently commissioning the first underground gold mine in Colombia. Colombia is a country that has attracted interest from the mining world for quite a few years now as the peace process has advanced. It's still a difficult country to operate in. I know I just spent 2 weeks there, so I learned a lot about the opportunities and the challenges in Colombia. But if you can pick the right parts of the country, and if you can do it with a team that knows how to operate and uses their ears and responds appropriately to the needs, it's an area that has some really good opportunities. And so they're now tapping into a resource that averages 5 grams per ton. They've got a very a nice, shiny new plant that's operating very well. There's some really good exploration upside. Classic situation where they haven't done a lot of exploration at this project for years because they've been focused on getting it into production. So really interesting exploration upside. And this is a stock that sort of, because it got into production just as the gold market started into this correction, hasn't gotten the re-rating that a stock would usually get as it moves into that producer category. So from an exploration upside and from a re-rating perspective, I think Red Eagle is another good one to pay attention to.
All right, so folks, it's resourcemaven.ca, resourcemaven.ca, if you'd like to know more about those two names. I'm sure, Gwen, you've written about them or will be writing about them in the near future, right?
I absolutely have written about both, for sure.
Oh, okay, so there you go, folks. A couple of very interesting possibilities. Eric, and you have a couple as well that you'd like to talk about. Possibly San Marco was one that you've mentioned to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've picked these two companies for a couple of reasons. One is they're sort of at opposite ends of the spectrum. That Bear Creek isn't in production yet. Mm-hmm. I've also picked them because they both happen to be presenters at the next Metal Investor Forum, which the esteemed Jay Taylor will be speaking at. and he does have a link on his website, people, just so you know, if you want to join us there.
Let me just clarify something for our listeners, Eric. You're not an IR guy.
No.
No, you're an analyst, and so it's very kind of you. But I'm not so sure about the esteemed part. But anyway, you're esteemed in my eyes.
We're
all right, so all right. So I'm sorry for the interruption, but I just had to clarify that you are not a BS IR guy. You are an analyst through and through, and Gwen as well. Are real people, not
real people.
Not
con artists. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Eric.
San Marco's an interesting story. They've got a couple of things going. I mean, I picked them because I know they're going to have a lot of news flow. They're working on two main things. One is the more advanced project, which they're just getting ready for drilling. It's all being permitted in Mexico. That project, they've just delivered another set of results from. I was talking to their president a few days ago, and he's expecting actually get a whole whack of more trenching and soil sampling and geophysical results on this project in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But he's already got very strong drill targets, but it's obvious from talking to him that their targets are getting quite a bit larger as they continue this work. The other thing that's interesting that San Marco is doing is they've got a joint venture with a private company called Globetrotters. Globetrotters specializes in targeting based on remote sensing, and by that I mean like Landsat, Aster, those sort of high-resolution things. This only really works if you're looking at outcrop. There's no depth penetration with this, so you've got to work in areas where there's lots of outcrop, and one of those areas happens to be Sonora State, Mexico. And the joint venture they have is they acquired all the data, they did all this targeting, they handed the San Marco guys this giant, and it is giant, list of targets, about 200 of them. They're doing the boots on the ground work. If it's something that's open and looks really good, they stake it. If it's something that looks really good, they may talk to a present owner about acquiring it. They've already picked up 8 or 10 concessions. The way this will work is that it'll be fast and dirty. They're going to end up dropping most of these, but things that look like they could work, they'll be advancing rapidly. So I expect them to generate a whole lot of targets over the next few months. I'm talking to Bob. I know that they're pretty excited about a couple of these things already. And I can tell you, though Globetrotters is private, I know the CEO. He started this company to do the same thing in Peru, and he's got option agreements with several majors. And I know Lundin Mining, for instance, has a porphyry discovery that they don't talk about that I know they made strictly based on his targeting. And it was really, apparently this thing's like right next to the Pan American Highway. For whatever reason, nobody else ever looked at it.
Wow.
He picked up alteration zones. That's what this does. And then just the alterations, that's all great, but somebody's actually got to go look at it and bang rocks, and that's where the San Marco guys come in.
All right. Well, that's remarkable. I should mention also that it's only an $8 million market cap, something like that, right, Eric? San Marco.
And he's got a lot of big supporter shareholders. Most of the big guys at Haywood are big shareholders of his company. Tukey Angus, who's a director and a friend of mine. He's the biggest shareholder. It's one of those deals where if he gloms onto something, he's going to get market support because there's a lot of people behind him. He's got a lot of people on his side. Now, Bear Creek is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. They're doing detailed engineering and permitting now in their Corani project in Peru. Corani's got about 300 million ounces of silver. It also has very high lead zinc credits, and one of the things that makes it interesting to me is it's gotten whacked because it's a silver stock. I'm not and have never been a silver bug, but the one thing that I like about this deal is it has extremely high leverage to silver. Corani's NPV goes up about $120 million for every $1 increase in the silver price. And because of what lead and zinc prices have done, the market's actually probably marked it down more than they should have because they're going, well, silver has gone down, so let's whack Bear Creek from $3.50 back to $2. But the truth is, if you look at the actual production in the first 5 years and you look at the price increases for lead and zinc, they've essentially offset the losses due to the price drop in silver. So their $600 million NPV is still basically valid. So I'm viewing that as it's a nice stock people have sort of forgotten about. That's why I asked them to present at the next MIF. But it's also one, if you are a silver bug and you want leverage, they have really, really high leverage to silver prices.
All right, very good. Well, we're going to have to leave it go at that. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I should mention, and I didn't, that the Metals Investor Forum that Eric just referred to will be held on the 20th and 21st of January, again in Vancouver. Go to jtaylormedia.com to sign up for it. Just click on the Metals Investor Forum link there. And it's very easy, just name and email and you're off, but you do need to sign up because their space is limited and you want to make sure you have a space there. So I hope all of you will consider going, those of you who are at least in that in the metropolitan area up there in the northwestern part of this continent. And again, Gwen, are you, the two companies you named going to be there by any chance?
They are, yep. They're both going to be there presenting for sure.
Excellent. Very good. Well, we'll really look forward to seeing both of you and hearing those stories and many, many more. That it's always an excellent forum. It's an excellent conference, one of actually the best one that I've been to, that I've participated in it all. So I hope my listeners will make every effort to be there. Thanks so much for being with us again, both of you, Gwen and Eric, and we'll look to see you in a couple of weeks.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Jay.